Okay, let's make another video. As you saw by the title of today's video, something actually I wrote a few years ago. I'll read it to you, the entire thing. A free, mature person, a true rebel, rejects society's assigned lessons in favor of their own feminine, the intuitive findings. I've spoken about this many times, but it needs to be spoken about many times because I know that some of you probably live like this now, but most of us don't. We go along with what we're told. We take that as a way to live, the only way to live. But that's not true. There have been many examples, and I've been writing about this now nearly 25 years, probably over 25 years, speaking about it a lot longer than that. And I'm going to read some of the article or post that I did a few years ago regarding this with examples. Yeah, so a truly mature person listens to their own inner findings, whether it is in your dreams, whether it is in visions, and especially intuition. Intuition is the core of the feminine, like I said so many times before. The collective unconscious, the psyche, the deeper psyche, which we go on a quest for, the inner quest, the quest for the recovery of the soul, the main archetypal journey of humanity. Because it is the same theme, the same purpose, the same story all around the world. It's tinted with tradition and geographical location, language, and so on. But it's always the same story: a journey inward to afterlife for the recovery of your own divine part, which is the soul. And the core of that, if you ever went that far and you met, not only met, but you went that far and you saw what it is at the core of the center. The core of the center, the core of the self is intuition. So you will find, a person, archetype of the wise old man or wise man and wise old woman, and they know things. They know things more than what you know, and they're able to teach you. That's your intuition. That's what that is all about. So you've got your tree, the symbols, the archetypal symbols of this are the tree, the flowering tree, for the fruit that the fruit of wisdom, the gift of intuitive insight. You've got your water is the same thing, fresh water. So you've got your ponds, you've got your wells, you've got your springs that are bubbling up from deep inside of the unconscious, of the deeper psyche, the collective unconscious. And they bring with them, if you drink of that, then you become wise. You've got the salmon of wisdom in British, should I say, in Irish mythology, right? Then you've got all sorts of, sacred animals that give you that wisdom. You've got your dog, for instance, the Anubis. I've spoken about this before, in ancient Egypt mythology, the one that brings you, the psychopomp that brings you to afterlife, to the other side, and the one that gives you answers. I've shared the dream. I can't remember her name now. I might have look it up. But she was there in the museum, and he spoke to her. She was looking at the artifacts, and he walked up to her and says, "You can look at that. Look up there. You can study the artifacts if you want, but I can teach you all that." So this is what my talk is going to be about today. Shorter one, hopefully. So I'll read you from some of the examples that I've collected over the years. I mean, I've shared with you so many examples of my own life where intuition taught me directly. I didn't need to read. I didn't need to be taught by anyone. I didn't need a guru. I've never met a guru. you know. So everything I know, literally everything I know, later I collected examples to help me express these ideas, to show these ideas to the community, to support these ideas. But everything I know is from intuition and dreams. First it was in art, then first it was in dreams, then in art, then in poetry, then just simply directly in intuition. I still do, you know, I carry a notepad and a pen, and if I'm thinking about something, I'm looking for a solution to something, I write it down quickly in my notebook when the answer comes. Just wait. I gotta let in my new friend. We've got our family of animals is expanding. I got a cat. He came last winter. Here he is. Came last winter. Cold and hungry and homeless. And now I started feeding him, and now he's part of the family. And he's the Black Panther, the backyard boss, aka Morris the Boris. So let me, you know, instead of me prattling on like this, I'll read you a few bits and pieces that I've written about this, you know, this ability to receive answers directly from the collective unconscious, really, from the soul. Yeah. And this is about a movie, Man Who Knew Infinity. Do you know? Perhaps you've watched it. It's about an Indian man, a young Indian man who received answers. He solved some of the most complex mathematical solutions, and he did, you know, the way he received these answers were directly within him. It was given to him on his tongue, and he says when he slept or when he was contemplating, and it just bang, and he got it. And I'll tell you, and I write to you what I read to you what I wrote about this after watching the movie. Once I watched the marvelous movie, The Man Who Knew Infinity. It's a true story of a young Indian man from Madras, Srinivasa Ramanujan, who solved some of the most profound and considered impossible to solve mathematical problems by simply trusting his inward resources, his inner voice of intuition. Now, how he got this, yeah? At the end of the movie, The Man with Who Knew Infinity, the hero of the story, Ramanujan, finally answers the question of his colleague, which he managed to avoid for years because he knew it would not be understood by a rational man who didn't believe in anything more than his intellect. And he answered that question, how he got his answers like this. You wanted to know how I got my ideas. My God, Parvati, she speaks to me, puts formulas on my tongue when I sleep, sometimes when I pray. It's exactly the way I've been writing about the way I got all my answers. The way Jung gets his answers, got his answers. The way Joseph Campbell, I know Joseph Campbell doesn't speak about his revelations or his dreams. He never does, only mythology. But I know for a fact that he had a little table, his favorite chair, and when his mode of learning, of getting the wisdom, was reading. But he didn't just read from cover to cover. Something happened to him while he was reading, and these things made a huge impact on him. He doesn't speak about it very much, but if you listen, it's there. And the way it worked was he would sit there, you know, initially nothing would happen because after, you know, having, you know, a busy day, your mind is busy, it's occupied. But once you sit down, once you open a book and start reading, might be an hour or 2 or 3 or a day into the reading, because you would read more or less 8 hours a day, something would happen, and he would start to underline passages, underline words, and underline whole paragraphs. And he said, this is the moment when I received my answers directly, intuitively. It might not be the whole, the paragraph might not make the whole sense, but it didn't speak directly, or the paragraph might not have anything to do with how can I explain? It had the answer he was looking for. It might not be exactly as it said in the paragraph, but in between the words, it had the answer he was looking for. I read exactly the same way. I've shown you my books. They, you know, I'm when I read, I start with a blue pen, then I go into black, then I go into red, and sometimes into green, and I go over it again. Something, every time you start, something new comes. That's important to understand. Every time you sit down, you might have read that book 10 times, but even if you forget about knowing what you found out the first time around, or the second, third, or even the 10th time around you're reading the same book, something new is going to come through. The collective unconscious, the archetype will speak to you again. Something new is going to come through that you haven't had, it didn't come through before. You know? So this is how he got his answers, this Ramanujan, yeah? So he says, you wanted to know how I got my ideas. My god Parvati, she speaks to me, puts formulas on my tongue when I sleep, sometimes when I pray. That's the core of the feminine. Yeah? The core of the feminine is intuition. And when you go and look at the mythology and the symbols of the soul, when you go as far as the most inward center, to the collective unconscious, to the archetype, which is the whole purpose of your life, to at least once in your life experience this journey. Not before you die, right before you die, when we do experience these things, because you will experience it, but you can't come back, return, and share or understand what happened to you. You can't study it and understand, compare it to mythology, compare it in depth psychology, so I can understand where you went. So then you can share it with community. It's too late then. You got to do it while you're still alive. So you can return, you can study, you can compare, and you go, oh my gosh, my experience and the experience of the Bushmen of the Kalahari, the experience of the ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, the Brits, you know, the Japanese or anyone else is exactly the same. It's just tinted by my own tradition, or my on my own. You know, the symbols are exactly the same, but it's just tinted in my own experience. That's all it is. Yeah, so you will go to that core, and at the core, at the center, is perhaps a tree or a, like I shared with you so many times, the cave, the sacred mountain, the stream, a sacred animal, a frog perhaps, or a bird. A frog because it lives both in the water and the land. It's both in the land of the collective, in the land of the psyche of the collective unconscious, and on land in the visible reality, in the invisible and in the visible. So that's the bird. It works exactly the same way. It's on the threshold between the two. Water is exactly the same because it bubbles up from some deep unknown source, from the collective unconscious, you know, from the soul. It bubbles up and it comes up onto the surface of the visible life, of the visible reality. You know, the threshold, the in between the two realities. There is the center. This is your inner world, this is your outer world, and in between sits the intuition. That is the soul. That is the core of spirituality and religion in all our cultures. Whether it is the cross that mediates between above and below, whether it is a human figure or a god divine figure on a pedestal because it's in between the two realities, above and below. A king used to sit on a throne and it would be raised, you see, on a platform. So again, between the two realities, between the invisible and visible, between the soul and this reality of the visible everyday life. All religions, when you walk into a temple, if for instance in Japan you've got two different figures on the sides of the door, one a horrible figure and one a friendly figure. There's your opposites, and you walk in through the center. When you walk into a Christian church or Catholic church, yeah, you have a font. where you dip your hand in the water, there's the water again, and cross yourself. And the font usually has 8 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's octagonal. And there's the 8. The 8 that mediates, you know, the figure 8, the above, the below together. That's how you enter. That's how you enter. And that's what you see inside the core of that center, the core. If you go into tarot, the tarot is not meant to be just there to predict the future, but it's like I read it somewhere. I think it was Eva Ryder, and she is a tarot expert, not like me, but she did a wonderful post where I read, and it says that when the tarot is not used merely just to predict the future, but it becomes a mirror of the psyche when you use it properly. And in the major arcana, the 21 cards, at the apex of that tree, so if you're climbing, for instance, the tree, you are integrating the archetype, you're climbing the tree to the apex. At the apex is the world card. And what do we see in the world card? The feminine figure in the dance that she's mediating between above and below. There is the center, the most inward center. This is the core of the lesson. Yeah? The feminine is the soul, the spirit, the intuition that mediates between you and the source. Yeah? So we've been worshipping this as a humanity for hundreds, if not millions of years. This is the core of all religion. Yeah? Okay, so I'll read you a few more examples of this ability to receive answers directly from within, which is true maturity. This is the true maturity. You know, when you are able finally to put aside the instructions that have been you've been bombarded with every day, and have your own access to this reality, to this intuitive instructions that are coming to you in dreams and visions, like Jung or Campbell or Marie-Louise von Franz, many others. Einstein, I'll read you in a moment, but here is Nikola Tesla. Yeah. So this is part of from my article that I just read you about the man who knew infinity. This reminds me of other such weird stories and people who experienced them, such as Nicola Tesla. In one well-known tale of his life, he was walking in his favorite park, engrossed in his thoughts, contemplating a solution to one of his inventions, the electric motor. Now, this is Nikola Tesla speaking. One afternoon, which is ever present in my recollection, the sun was just setting, and reminded me of Goethe's glorious passage. The glow retreats. Dawn is the day of toil. The ego's out of the way. Upon its track to follows soaring. Intuition's coming. The ego's out of the way, the intuition's coming. And then something happens. As I uttered these inspiring words, the idea came to me like a lightning flash. Bang! Lightning flash. The lightning flash, not thunder, but lightning itself, especially at night, when it comes and hits, it illuminates the whole area, and you know what's in the dark. That's the whole idea about this, right? Lightning flash. I fell to my knees and drew a diagram. Tesla perceived a whirling field of energy, and he suddenly knew he could recreate this rotating field by arranging coils of the motor in different steps or phases, like the pistons of a biplane engine. So he saw a circle, rotating circle. That was the answer. The resulting forces of magnetic attraction and repulsion would literally twist the rotor in a circle, the electrical equivalent of a wheel. So that's how electricity is made. Electricity is made by the two opposites, or rather the opposites working together. The friction of the opposites is what creates electricity. And electricity, by the way, is another example of metaphor of the soul, or the spirit, of your intuition, of the energy that gives the answers, that gives you all the solutions. I remember once I had a dream where, after working like this intuitively, intuition opened up, and I had a dream that a female figure came up to me, and she gave me a little pail, a little, not a handbag, but a container, a pail. Do you know the gods that are carrying the pails? That's what that means. Especially the wind gods that carry the pail. Well, that's what that means. In that pail, inside that container, was energy. Like the color was yellow, like honey. Honey is another metaphor for this spirit, for this energy. Yeah. I don't remember what she said, but I knew that she was the general manager or the director of a huge electricity station. So the pail, the honey, the water of life, if you like, the female figure, and electricity are the same thing. So the creating of energy, what Tesla experienced, the whirling wheel of the opposites, creates the energy. The interplay of the opposites creates energy. In other words, your spirit, the intuitive revelations that are given to you, come from being centered intuitively, and the information flows between you and the collective unconscious and the archetypal. Yeah. So that's Nikola Tesla. Another example is Maurice Wilkie. And Maurice Wilkie, a British guy, he invented four-wheel drive systems. Yeah. So another such example of walking around and receiving insights from within is Maurice Wilkie's invention of the four-wheel drive system for the Land Rover, which came to him while walking in the beach in Wales. He stopped and drew the idea in the sand, and from that moment on, of imaginative inspiration, we have the 4x4 system. So again, like Tesla, in a moment of where he went out of his own way, he was trying to solve the problem of the four-wheel drive, and he was out on the beach. Beach is, of course, to many of you who are familiar with the symbols of the soul, is another example of the union of the opposites, if you like. So there's the water, the ocean, and the beach. In between the two, you walk the middle way. That's the Buddha's middle way, and answers come. Yeah. Let me give you one more wonderful example. Kekler. Actually, okay, a story of Einstein. What are we going for time? Okay, so I got to finish. A story of Einstein told by Brian Swim, the famous cosmologist. Yeah. A story about Einstein from an interview with Brian Swim about the making of the documentary The Life and Work of Famous Archaeologist Maria Gimbutas. So I got this example from that interview for making of Maria Gimbutas documentary by Brian Swim. So this is Brian Swim talking. He, in other words Einstein, invented the fundamental theory of cosmology that we use today. So he gave birth to what he called field equations. In other words, he wrote down the equations that tell us how the universe organizes itself. But he had no data about the large-scale universe. Yeah? That came later, after him. Yeah, when you receive the answers first, you're not going to have examples, you're not going to have details. You're simply just going to go bang, lightning flash, you're going to get the answer. The research, the examples, the things, the theory that's going to support your discovery, your insight, comes later. It always does. The whole thing doesn't come as a thesis for you to copy. Only the answer. The rest you have to work it out yourself. Yeah. but came later after him. So people are asking, how did you get this information? Yeah, how did you get that, Einstein? Well, imagination, intuition, through profound reflection at the bodily level. He even used the word musculature, so he would be in touch with those very dynamics that gave birth to the universe. That's how he could actually express them. So he was the universe writing its own signature through the power of intuition. So again, Einstein, E equals mc squared. What does that say? Energy equals mass. And what did I say about energy? Energy is spirit. So spirit is mass. That's the whole. That's the underlying idea behind his formula. What the answer that he got? E equals mc squared. It's simply a revelation of the timeless truth, the eternal, the archetypal, that spirit is not missing from matter. Spirit or energy is matter. It manifests itself, embodies itself in all matter. Einstein found that out in his own scientific, intuitive way. That is the core of our work as human beings in our lifetime, to realize that there is no split. That matter is spirit and spirit is matter. Everything is divine. Yeah? Okay. Should I give you another example? This is from the movie The Legend with Tom Cruise. Maybe some of you have seen it, yeah? How did you know my name? Asked Jack. And Jack is Tom Cruise playing the role of Jack. How does a migrating swallow know the way south in winter, or the spawning salmon find the very source of its birth from the cold dark depth of the mysterious sea? I know everything, Jack, answered the elf Honeythorn Gump from the movie The Legend. I know everything, Jack. Yeah. Another example. Story of Einstein. Okay. Bede wrote a wonderful story about a monk that didn't. What are we going for time? Okay, I gotta finish. That monk that didn't. He was. He felt. He didn't have he couldn't sing, he couldn't play instruments like all the other monks and so on. Whenever they started singing or playing, he would leave the hall and go and sleep. Anyway, so there's a wonderful ancient tale told in Bede's Historia Ecclesiastica of a shy bard called Caedmon, who benefited from his soul's installing confidence in his own inner resources and its mysterious way of illuminating wisdom beyond learning. And it goes something like this: wisdom beyond learning. You can sum up the whole thing that I'm saying to you is wisdom beyond learning, because you're getting wisdom, you don't learn, you bang and you got it. Yeah, you don't have to study and read. According to Bede, Caedmon was a lay brother who cared for his animals at the monastery. One evening, while the monks were feasting, singing and playing the harp, Caedmon left early to sleep with the animals because he knew no songs. Right? The impression clearly given by Saint Bede is that he lacked the knowledge of how to compose the lyrics to songs. While he slept, someone stood by him in a dream, greeted, called him by his name, and said to him, "Caedmon, sing me something." "I cannot sing." "Sing me something," he replied. "I don't know how to sing. That is the reason I left the feast. I am here because I cannot sing." The personage insisted. "No matter, you must sing it to me." "Well," he answered, "what shall I sing?" To which the other responded, "Sing the beginning of created things." And at that, straightway, Caedmon sang in praise of God the Creator verses he had never heard before. Yeah, it's possible. I am telling you from my own experience and the experience of many others. I can cite these examples to you. There are many others. There's the guy that invented benzene or petrol. He too was had his answer of how the molecular structure of benzene or chemical structure of benzene, how it looks, so he could invent it, and he had it in his dream and in vision. A circle again, the molecules aligned themselves like that, and bang, he got it, and that's how we got petrol to this day. Yeah. All right, I gotta wrap it up. So to summarize, I'll read you again from The Man Who Knew Infinity. What was his name? I always forget. You have to. Srinivasa Ramanujan. Srinivasa Ramanujan. So this is Srinivasa Ramanujan's answer to how he gets his answers, how he was able to solve all these really difficult mathematical equations so easily where others couldn't. You wanted to know how I get my ideas. My God, Parvati, she speaks to me, puts formulas on my tongue when I sleep, sometimes when I pray. I hope that happens to you, and that finally you too can join the rest of us, the deviants, you know, the strange ones, the irrational crowd, the intuitive crowd, the lone wolves, the ones that are marginalized by society, because you will be marginalized by society. You don't need the society then. That makes you dangerous. Not so long ago, I would have been dragged out onto the public square somewhere, tied up to a pole, and my soul would have been saved by burning me alive because of my heretic tendencies, to put it lightly, right? So would you, if you don't need the authorities, especially a few hundred years ago, not even a few hundred years ago, not so long ago, the church that knew everything, he had the monopoly on talking to God. You were not allowed to talk to God by yourself. You had to go to the church, and the church would talk on your behalf. That's how they got rich. Very, very rich. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk to you today. I hope it was helpful. If you like it, then please leave a comment and maybe subscribe to my channel. It always helps. So I'll see you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.